Before we get into today's episode, I want to share a new resource we've put together with 3 of our favourite breakfast recipes for kids that will help to improve their mood and behaviour throughout the day. You can grab your copy by heading on over to naturalsuperkids.com/breakfast. You'll find the link in the show notes as well. Unfortunately, many kids are starting the day with refined, processed, sugary breakfasts, which are leading to fluctuations in their energy, their mood, and their behaviour throughout the day. And if we can get some good quality nourishing food into our kids at the start of the day that contains some good quality protein, some healthy fats, some complex carbohydrates, and vitamins and minerals that are going to nourish their brain, it sets them up for more balanced moods, better behaviour, and improved learning throughout the day as well. These recipes we've put together are quick and easy to make, perfect for those busy mornings. They're nutritious and healthy and delicious. Your kids will love them. So make sure you grab your copy by heading on over to naturalsuperkids.com/breakfast. Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hey there, welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast. Oh, this feels a little weird. It's been a little while since I've recorded a podcast. Our podcasts have been coming out every week, but I batch recorded a whole heap of episodes well before we left on our overseas adventure, which I am talking about on today's episode. So we are back from our overseas adventure, and I'm recording this a little later than I would have liked. We got back over a week ago, but I picked up a pretty awful virus on the flight home, I'm assuming, and ended up pretty sick last week. So you might be able to still hear I'm still a little croaky and still a little congested. I was the only one that got sick in the family, so that was a good thing. But, interesting as well. I did sit separately from my family on the last leg home from Sydney back to Adelaide, and there was a spare seat next to me. I was in the aisle seat, there was a spare seat, and then there was a lady on the window seat who was sniffling and blowing her nose, and so I'm guessing I picked something up from her. Who knows? I know flights are germ centres, so that was not a good way to land back home, but I'm feeling 1,000 times better this week. Last week was tricky. Coming back home, the post-holiday blues, getting back into work, and there was some challenges work-wise for me, and then, being sick on top of it. So anyway, this week is a new week and I'm feeling much better. So this episode is all about the realities of our overseas adventure, traveling with teenagers. So if you missed last week's episode, I recorded that before we left, and that was all about the planning of the trip. And so I wanted to follow that up with an episode on what it was really like. So I will start by saying we had the most incredible trip. We were away for 4 weeks. We spent 5 or 6 days in Los Angeles in California, and then we spent the rest of our time in Canada. So the entire trip went so smoothly. I did have a little underlying nervousness about, flight delays or issues with our luggage. We traveled with mountain bikes. So my husband and my son took their mountain bikes, and they're kind of prized possessions of theirs. And so I was a little nervous, what if they go missing? a big part of our trip, well, the Canada part anyway, was all about mountain biking. So anyway, it all went smoothly. We did not lose the mountain bikes. We had no flight delays. We flew Qantas and we were really impressed with Qantas. So that's just a bit of a side note. We haven't travelled long haul for many years. We've never travelled long haul with the kids. We've been to Bali, we've been to New Zealand, we've done lots of travel in Australia, but we haven't been any further than that. So, it's been many years in terms of being on a long haul flight. And yeah, it was painful. It was like 15 hours, the longest leg. And it was long, but it was not as bad as I thought it might be. I found the seats, we were just in economy, a little bit roomier than I thought they might be. We've travelled Jetstar to Bali. I can't remember who we travelled with to New Zealand, but compared to Jetstar, Qantas felt very luxurious. Yeah, and the food wasn't bad. I mean, it was aeroplane food, but it wasn't terrible. And we passed a lot of time, watching movies and trying to sleep. So we put a lot of planning, a lot of time into the planning of this trip. So we had all of our accommodation booked. We had our cars booked. I'd researched things to do in each place, places to eat, stops I wanted to kind of make in between places. It was essentially a road trip, really, which I'll get to in a moment. And so I was very thankful for all that planning I'd done. I know a month to some people feels a long time. I was feeling like, oh, is it going to be long enough? It definitely was in terms of the stage we are at in terms of having teenagers. They were certainly ready to come home. And I'll get into some of the, the trickiness of the dynamics between us all. We were all ready to come home and have a break from each other, if I'm honest. I do really love slow travel and longer travel. So you're not sort of go the whole time. And you can kind of explore places past that surface level kind of, let's see this and this and tick those off, in terms of the big tourist attractions or the sites you want to see. But yeah, 4 weeks was a good amount of time. It was very interesting. It was quite crazy, really, how familiar places felt more than 20 years later. So in Los Angeles, we stayed in Hermosa Beach. I love that area. If anyone knows of it, it's, I guess, one of the beach towns, if you like, of Los Angeles. And we stayed in Hermosa in a hostel, in a backpackers hostel, when we travelled in our 20s. So to go back to Hermosa, we stayed in an Airbnb. It was very expensive. We got this little, it was fine. It was just a little kind of place, a few streets back from the beach. It was a really good location. But yeah, we definitely paid a lot for, what we got in terms of just it being in that location. But being back in that area, it was just crazy how familiar it all felt all these years later. And it was the same in Vancouver and Jasper in Canada as well, where we spent quite a bit of time in our 20s. A lot of years have passed since we've been there, but it was really interesting how familiar a lot of things felt. And it was really good to revisit places that we'd been before and plan our trip knowing the area. So, for example, Banff is a really well-known town in the Rocky Mountains. Because we'd been before, we knew that Banff is beautiful, but it's very touristy, it's very expensive, and we much prefer Jasper. And so we planned our trip knowing that Jasper's much more laid back. It's still up there in terms of expensive, but not on the same kind of level as Banff. So we stayed a couple of nights in Banff, but we stayed a whole week in Jasper because there's so much to explore in that area. And yeah, I would say the town of Banff is definitely more stunning than the town of Jasper, but the things to kind of see and do in the area, I much prefer Jasper. So it was really nice to have that previous knowledge of places. Hermosa Beach was another one. It's such a great area. We wouldn't have known about it if we hadn't been there before. my husband actually remembered a big festival, the Fiesta Hermosa, that was there, and looked it up, and we planned our trip knowing that that was going to be on as well. So that insider knowledge of knowing the area and being there before was really helpful in terms of planning the trip, ahead of time. It was just such an incredible trip. I forgot how stunning Canada is. I'd had conversations with the kids about you just wait until you see the mountains in Canada. They are absolutely unbelievable in terms of their scale and their size. And that's what I had remembered, driving along those roads, those highways in Canada with like humongous mountains on either side of you. But what I'd forgotten about is how green and lush, and I just love those North American trees as well. So coming from South Australia, that is very flat, very dry, Canada, and also coming from Los Angeles, which was crazy busy, and we were very busy while we were there as well. We got to Canada and it just felt like, we can exhale, we can relax. Vancouver Airport is beautiful, and then, we picked up our hire car 20 minutes out of Vancouver. We felt like, oh my gosh, this is what this trip is about. Los Angeles was good. It was, such a good vibe, lots to see and do, crazy different to little old, South Australia where we live. We live about an hour south of Adelaide. So the kids are not used to big cities. And so it was a bit of an experience for them. We're very much more nature people. Well, most of us are. I'll get to that in a second. And so getting to Canada was like, it just felt really good. And it almost felt like, I don't know, in a weird way coming home. Like my husband and I have spent quite a bit of time in Canada. We traveled through Canada, and at the time we were traveling there, my husband was already 30. So I think the visa cutoff was like 29 at the time. So we just traveled through there and then went to the UK and worked for a while. And then they changed the age limit and extended it. So then we went back to Canada and worked for a whole year. We did a winter season and a summer season and did a lot of traveling while we were there. So we feel like, we've spent quite a bit of time in Canada. And so it really did feel like, coming home, very familiar. And I think the culture and the people in Canada are so similar to Aussies that you kind of naturally get that feel as well. We planned a lot of fun activities for the kids. My son, as I've shared before, and my husband are very keen on mountain biking. So there was quite a bit of mountain biking thrown in the mix. We took their mountain bikes. If you don't know, Canada is like the mountain biking place to go in the world. It's got amazing mountain biking. The facilities are incredible. So they were in mountain biking heaven, especially at Whistler. The whole sort of ski hill becomes a mountain biking hill, and, you get the gondola up and you can spend so much more time like doing the fun stuff, coming down the mountains. So they loved that. We did some whitewater rafting, which was really fun. Very cold. Oh my gosh, the water was freezing. We were all shivering our little hearts out by the end of it. But yeah, lots of smiles and laughs all round. That was a really good family activity to do. My daughter and I did some zip lining in Whistler, which was lots of fun as well, while the boys were mountain biking. We did a mountain coaster in Revelstoke. So we tried to fit in, those fun kind of thrilling activities, which the kids really enjoyed. Really interesting. All of a sudden, I am the one who is most nervous about these kinds of activities. I've always been fairly adventurous. I've done skydiving and paragliding and parasailing and lots of things like that when I was younger. And I don't know, like since I've been, I'm mid-40s now, I feel like in my 40s, this kind of fear of heights has started to come about. And I mean, I was fine, but I was definitely out of my comfort zone with some of the activities. And it's just interesting, the dynamic of like, 1 minute you're a mum kind of helping your kids overcome the fear of these kinds of activities, the next minute the tables are turned. And let's just say they're not as supportive. The kids aren't as supportive as I might have been with them. So yeah, that was a big realization on this trip. Like, hang on, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm the scaredy cat of the family. But I put myself out there and I, did these activities, which I'm really glad that I did. We got so lucky with wildlife on this trip. The kids just think it's normal to see bears everywhere in Canada. And we were saying, like, this definitely is not normal. So, it's something that does happen, but we spent a couple of months working and living in Jasper in our 20s, and we didn't see any bears. We did see bears when we went up further north, and we travelled up to Alaska. But this one day we went from Banff to Jasper, and it's the most stunning drive along the Icefield Parkway. There's so much to see and do, and in this one day we saw, I lost count, like 5 or 6 bears along that drive. And we got to our accommodation in Jasper, and it was this most perfect accommodation, this log cabin. It was just beautiful. If you go to Canada, you must stay at the Alpine Village, Jasper. Beautiful log cabins. It was the highlight of our trip in terms of accommodation. And we arrived there. We spent 4 nights there and 2 nights somewhere else in Jasper. We arrived there and there was a grizzly bear right out the front of our cabin. It was incredible. We've seen a grizzly bear before, my husband and I, up in Alaska when we were hiking, and it was like a long way away, and it was scary because there was nothing to kind of protect us. It was just us and this bear. But this was such a different experience. Because we could sit out on the deck of our cabin and watch this grizzly bear. It was literally just eating the grass in front of our cabin. And apparently we were just there at such a good time. The first week of June is the best time to view these grizzly bears because they are generally eating grass. Further in the season they move to berries and fish, but they come into these kind of, I guess, cabin complexes. And it came back every single night and even some mornings, and we could just sit and watch, either in the comfort of our cabin with the fire on or outside the cabin. When we moved to our next accommodation in Jasper, at Patricia Lake, just very close to our cabin, we saw a grizzly bear with 2 cubs as well, doing the same sort of thing. So we just got so lucky with wildlife. We had a lot of amazing bear interactions, which was so cool, and grizzly bears as well as black bears, which, they're a lot more rare. And of course we saw elk and deer and squirrels and chipmunks and marmots. Even just seeing squirrels was pretty exciting. We don't get those here in Australia. I know in the UK and Canada and the US, they're everywhere, a bit like, kangaroos here. So yeah, we got very lucky with the wildlife sightings, which was amazing, and just so much hiking and so much outdoor time. I love hiking. I could just hike every day when I'm on holiday. The kids, not so much. They do a bit of it and then, get sick of it. There was a lot of, do we have to do another hike? Yes, we do. We're in Canada. That's what we do when we're in Canada. Although they would complain about it, they're faster than me. We did this pretty intense hike to the top of a mountain and they were complaining about doing it. They didn't want to do it. And I insisted that we do it. And I was definitely the slowest. They're much faster than me uphill. So yeah, even though they complain, they kind of get on with it and do it. So yeah, so many great things about this trip. It's my kind of holiday. Lots of time outdoors, exploring, hiking. Just beautiful. So challenges along the way were definitely there. The family dynamics and traveling at this stage of our life and our parenting journey definitely had its fair share of challenges. And look, I don't want to blame all of the challenges on the kids being teenagers, because it was really more the dynamic between the 4 of us. And, being totally transparent, I'm sure at least some listeners will be able to relate to this. When you're together with your family 24/7, no work, no school, no friends, no extended family, it's lovely in so many ways. And it's one of the reasons that I love to travel, because you kind of get away from all of those everyday distractions. But it is challenging in so many ways as well. I think for us, our kids are so different. My daughter, she loved Los Angeles and she loved California. She loved the beaches, the shopping, just the buzz, the atmosphere. There was lots of markets on. So that was her highlight. And our son hated Los Angeles. He does not like shopping. He doesn't like wandering aimlessly. He doesn't like crowds. He doesn't like people watching. He doesn't like taking in the atmosphere. It's the sort of thing where you go out for dinner and you eat and he's like, all right, can we go now? It's like, no, we're just going to sit and enjoy this. That's one of my favorite things to do, just people watch and just, chat and enjoy the atmosphere. He needs to have a purpose. What are we doing? Why are we just wandering? When we were in Los Angeles, he declared, I hate sightseeing. Because, we were going to see this and that, and he just didn't see the point in it. So it's funny, isn't it? You learn a lot. And I knew that about him already, but that was kind of very apparent. As soon as we got to Canada, he was so much happier. You could just feel his demeanor change. He's a nature kind of kid. He likes being in nature. He loves mountain biking. He loves fishing. He'll complain about hiking, but I think he really does enjoy it. He's happiest on his bike, but really only if he's going fast down mountains, because they had their bikes with them, my husband and my son. My husband would be like, let's go for a cruise in Los Angeles. And he'd be like, where's the mountains? So that was tricky, and then our daughter, as I said, she really loved Los Angeles, but she was, 3 to 4 days into our Canada part of our trip, we were there for 3 weeks. She was like, I'm ready to go home now. She's seen it's more trees, it's more lakes, it's more waterfalls. I think she does enjoy it, but, just the age that they're at, and especially my daughter, she's very, connected with her friends. She missed her friends a lot. She was fine. She kind of got over it. She missed our puppy. She's a bit of a homebody. So, towards the end of our trip especially, she would, there was a few moments between her and I. The boys would be out mountain biking and she just was like, I'm not going for another walk. I'm not going to see another lake. So, a few times I was, felt my frustration rise and I just went out for a walk and left her at the accommodation because I just couldn't be bothered with another, argument. So that it was tricky to kind of manage those two, differences in the kids. And I just found it really tricky. I love just wandering and exploring new places and just sitting and absorbing, the atmosphere. People watching, the kids thought I was weird. They're like, that's called stalking, Mom. You can't just sit here and watch people. I'm like, it's a thing you do when you travel. You just sit and, absorb the atmosphere and, people watch. They thought it was weird that I wanted to do that. And it would be like, especially my son, what are we doing now? Can we just go back? This is boring. There had to be a purpose to why we were out and about. But ultimately, go back to what? The accommodation so you can have Wi-Fi. And that was quite triggering for me at times. Some days my daughter's highlight of the day was getting to the accommodation because then she would have Wi-Fi so she could message her friends. So, that caused a bit of friction between the four of us. My husband got very frustrated with that as well. It was quite triggering when they complained about being bored. There was a lot of lessons for us in our parenting on this trip for sure. We as kids, my husband and I, never got these kinds of experiences. Our parents couldn't afford to take us to overseas at all. I didn't travel overseas until I went on my own backpacking in my 20s. So, that that battle of like, you should be more grateful for this and you're so entitled. And not that I was saying these things out loud, maybe once or twice, but, that conflict in me, like, but this is just their norm. And especially my daughter, she wouldn't have chosen to go to Canada. So I can't expect her to be, to be grateful the whole time. Those moments were definitely, overshadowed by the positive experiences that we had, but just trying to keep things real and let people know that it definitely wasn't all sunshines and rainbows. My husband and I in our 20s, we traveled on a very tight budget, and we went back to a couple of the places that we had been, like where we stayed, and the kids would be like, oh my God, I can't believe you stayed here. Or we lived in this pretty dingy apartment block in Jasper when we were working, because we got our accommodation included in our job. And it was like, we visited it and it was still this kind of place where workers in the area lived, and it was pretty run down, it was pretty dingy, and they were like appalled that we lived somewhere like that. We're like, well, this is just what we did to travel. Like, it was more about the experience of traveling. This trip with the kids was a big step up from the kind of travel we did in our 20s. So, it was quite triggering when the kids complained. And that was something we had to work through. But as I said, it wasn't just the kids that made, there be challenges or tricky times. My husband and I deal with things very differently, especially when things go wrong. So, there was friction between us at times as well. I think when you travel, everything is just heightened and exacerbated. When you're out of your comfort zone and traveling, everyone's kind of out of their comfort zone. So it does cause some family conflict, and I think that's pretty normal. Thinking back to when we traveled previously, we were saying to the kids, we didn't even have phones. We didn't even have internet, I don't think. Or you had to go to the internet cafes and log into your Hotmail account. There wasn't like Google Maps. And when we were in our 20s in Los Angeles, I remember we hired a car for a few days and we drove out to Disneyland, and we found our way like on paper maps. And the highways and things in Los Angeles are so crazy and so overwhelming. So when we were driving around, we were very thankful this time to have internet access, to have Google Maps, just pop that up and it would clearly tell us where to go, what lane to be in. My husband did the most amazing job of driving. We hired a car in Los Angeles and one in Canada. We went through Turo, I think you spell it, Turo, which is like a car sharing app. So we hired other people's cars, which made it cheaper. We had to get big cars because we had the bikes. So my husband just did the most amazing job of like driving on the other side of the road, finding his way around, parking these huge cars in these very tight car parks that we had in some of our accommodation. Like in Whistler, we were in an apartment and it was underground parking and it was so tight. And I was like, if I was driving, there's no way I could do this. So yeah, my husband, I was very thankful for his amazing driving skills. He's done driving in jobs before, so he's very good at squeezing into small parks. So that was like, a bit stressful at times. The food was kind of in my ball court. We ate out quite a bit. We had some really great meals. We had a few fancy meals out, some more kind of cheaper options. We packed food, we made food. So we did a bit of a mix. In LA, it was a bit overwhelming. The first lunch we had out, we drove out to Malibu. We went to this kind of cafe on the beach. We had to pay for parking. And then we had to... we sat down and looked at the menu and it's like, the prices were, up there. And then you forget you've got to add taxes, you've got to add tips. That lunch, I just wish we just relaxed a little bit because it was a bit overwhelming. We all ordered something, it was more than we really wanted to pay. and it came out and the portions were massive. Like my daughter ate, I don't know, a tiny fraction of her meal. So I felt like, oh my gosh, we learned from that. Like me and my daughter would often share a meal, particularly in the US. The portions are just crazy over there. And so, yeah, we learnt kind of that from then, to share meals and that sort of thing. Although I was fairly relaxed about food, I let the kids buy, the cereals they'd seen online or snacks or candy that they wanted to try that they'd seen on YouTube or fast food that they'd seen. My son he wanted to go to Tim Hortons in Canada because someone had told him that a double coffee, he's 16 and a half. He doesn't drink a lot of coffee. He has the odd coffee, but he was mad on having this double, which is basically a double shot and 2 sugars. So I let him have that. So I just kind of let them go a bit. But food planning was quite overwhelming. The mental load, the decisions you have to make. We did eat out quite a bit, but eating out gets a bit, you get a bit over eating out all the time. And so we did definitely, shop at supermarkets. But when you're in a different country, I don't know if anyone else has sort of, I'm sure other people have experienced this, like every decision you've got, everything you buy is a decision, because at home you have the bread you buy, the crackers you buy, the milk you buy, the yogurt you buy, whereas over there it's like, oh, which one? And so that got quite overwhelming, making all those decisions and then thinking about like, what does our accommodation have? Does it have an oven? We've got to travel tomorrow, so how are we going to keep things cool? We can't buy too much food. We did take some insulated fridge bags. We stuffed those into the mountain bike bags and we froze a couple of items if we had a big travel day the next day. So I would like buy some mincemeat or some chicken or something and freeze it, so that would kind of act as an ice block for the trip there, and then we'd have that for dinner. So that was something that I would definitely recommend. The food was good, like Mexican food, Japanese food in both the US, in California and Canada were really good. We had a few really good steak meals when we sort of lashed out a bit. We tried not to eat too much takeaway, but of course we had to do the burger thing in the US. We didn't actually get like fast food burgers. We went to a couple of like diners and got some burgers. They were good. And so, yeah, I really loved kind of, eating different foods and things, but I was glad that I took some digestive support with me because, I am just used to eating so well. And when you're away, although we ate relatively well, but things were definitely a bit off track from our regular diet. But one of the things that I love about traveling is, exploring different food and trying different foods. So yeah, that was really good. Okay, anyway, I'm going to stop blabbering now. I really don't, if you've listened this far, then I don't know, like I really don't know if this is something that our audience at Natural Super Kids is interested in, but I thought I would share because as well as health and nutrition and naturopathy, my, other love really is travel. And I do love to plan travel adventures. And I thought, it would be worth sharing on the podcast for those people who are interested. So if you've listen this far, you obviously are one of those people that are interested. So yeah, reach out to me on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you, or send me an email, Jessica@Natural Super Kids, and let me know if you want to hear more. We won't be going on another big travel adventure anytime soon, but more than happy to share if and when we do, even, our shorter trips. But yeah, it was an incredible trip. I'm so proud of us for making it happen. There was a lot of saving, a lot of planning, a lot of preparing in terms of being away from the business for a month. The team at Natural Super Kids did an amazing job to keep everything running while we were away. So that was, that we're so grateful for the opportunity to be able to do this, and one of the benefits of having an online business, but we really wanted to have the month off, not to be working in different places. And that happened for us. So yeah, good to be back. And I hope you found this interesting and got some insights from this episode. I will be back next week with more of our regular kind of content on kids' health and nutrition. Talk to you then. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week. Hey, before you go, don't forget to grab your copy of our 3 breakfast recipes to improve your kids' mood and behaviour all day long. You can grab your copy by heading on over to naturalsuperkids.com/breakfast. Your kids and you will love these recipes, and they will set them up for more balanced moods, better behaviour, and improved learning throughout the day. The ebook includes 3 recipes, including our famous chocolate granola, as well as a pancake recipe and a frittata recipe. So head on over and grab your copy. We know you'll love them.